Good evening, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in the Western Cape in Swellendam, the third oldest town in South Africa, and someplace that was once upon a time its own independent republic, having declared its independence and succeeded in that endeavor for a few months back in the 18th century. But it is the third oldest town in South Africa. Breaking news today about an event that occurred last week. Odd that it took a week for this to happen. But two Ghanaian nationals, a former government spokesman for governance, and another person who's a counterterrorism security analyst in Ghana, have filed a case at the International Criminal Court, not the International Court of Justice, which resolves disputes between sovereign states, but the ICC, to have South Africa investigated for gross human rights violations. What violations are these? Well, the failure of the government of South Africa to act against xenophobes, racists, and Afrophobes who've been torturing, murdering, and harming foreign nationals, illegal and legal, in South Africa. Those who claim to associate with things like Operation Dudela and March and March have been violating the human rights of people here in South Africa. And so these two Ghanaian nationals claim to have taken South Africa to the ICC. Now, the government spokesman in Durko, Crispin Piri, said that there's no merit to this suit. Well, for once, Crispin Piri is 100% correct. Individuals cannot take sovereign states to the ICC. The International Criminal Court was a consequence of the Rome Statute, which was written by American lawyers. And the purpose of the Rome Statute, ladies and gentlemen, was to hold those culpable of war crimes and gross human rights violations accountable when a country doesn't have the means to prosecute them and is willing to let them be prosecuted on their behalf. That's the purpose of the ICC. So there's no merit to this whatsoever. However, it is a black eye, and it is embarrassing for South Africa, which now has to face the reality that people have turned against the ANC, its foreign policy, and its friends in terrorist corners of the world. The totalitarian states, Russia, the Communist Chinese, Iran, Brazil, Cuba, these are its friends. And it's increasingly finding itself isolated as other countries wake up to the foreign policy of South Africa, which is anathema to the normal state of relations between states. Really sad to see this happening on the ANC's watch, but it was predictable, easily predictable, given the arrogance of the ANC and its actions. Its constant mocking of the United States, the President of the United States, its unjust tariffs on our goods, its artificial quotas and blocks on our products and services coming into South Africa while enjoying free, unfettered access to our marketplace without tariffs, no duties. South Africa's enjoyed that privilege, as well as the United States giving South Africa $8.1 billion over the past 2.5 decades to fight HIV, advocating on behalf of South Africa for money from the IMF and the World Bank and other international fora. All these things the United States has done for South Africa, yet the constant abuse of a relationship, it's like being married to a drunk. No matter what you do, it's never good enough for them, and it's your fault. The U.S. has been on the receiving end of this for a long time. Now South Africa is finding itself in some corners, particularly amongst other African states and black African states at that, being accused of being Afrophobes and xenophobes and not protecting the nationals from those countries. We've seen over at least 160,000 foreign nationals leave South Africa, most of them criminal alien invaders, illegals, but some legals who fled out of fear of having their informal shelters or their homes burned down, beaten on the streets, attacked by these thugs, these domestic terrorists, that the government of South Africa has done virtually nothing to stop. Nothing to stop. But back to the point. It's very embarrassing for South Africa. Now, in the span of just a little over a year, we've had President Trump open a refugee program for South Africans who are racial minorities suffering from unjust racial persecution, which the government of South Africa denies. But of course, the 145 race-based laws, the quotas on the number of white men who can work in jobs in the private sector is exactly that, racist. So they can deny it all they want. The reality is it's racist. But individuals cannot take a case to the ICC against a state. The ICC doesn't exist to prosecute crimes committed by sovereign states. The International Court of Justice will deal with disputes between countries, but individuals cannot sue those countries in the ICC. So folks, this is, in some respects, a big nothing burger, and I'll talk about that on my Evenings with a Colonel program so that people understand that there's really nothing to this. There's no case against South Africa for this. Even if they're complicit or guilty of the allegations, there's no case, there's no venue here at the ICC. It exists to prosecute individuals who are beyond the reach of government, not countries. But whatever the case, what an embarrassing situation. Your black brothers and sisters in Nigeria, in Malawi, in Zimbabwe, in Ghana are angry at the xenophobia and the Afrophobia and the racist attacks by black Africans on black Africans. It's time to go back to the drawing board, Ronald Lamola. Pull out a book. It says Foreign Policy Diplomacy for Dummies, because you need a primer in how to execute foreign policy. And while we're at it, the government of South Africa needs to take a close look at those committing these crimes, domestic terrorism, and threats against foreign nationals. It won't stop at them. It'll come after South Africans in general at some point. What say you, South Africa, Mzansi? From Swellendam, this is Chris reporting. Cheers.